Hi everybody, it's Megan Reeds and I'm here to, yes, you guessed it, talk all about books. And this is November. This is our beginning of talking about new books this month. Actually, it's kind of crazy too because the book that I'm actually going to be talking about is a book that was not on my TBR list. Shock of shocks, I know. It was actually through NetGalley, and I was hoping and praying I would get this book when I saw that it was an option. And for months and months, I was waiting and waiting, and I got an email literally like yesterday or the day before that this book came in, and I was like, oh, I'm reading it the second I get it. I don't care. I've been waiting so long. And it's a book by a really well-known author that I actually really enjoy, so I was like, I'm fitting this in, and I'm going to fit it in right in the beginning here. And that would be Secluded Cabin Sleep 6 by Lisa Unger. I was so excited for this book, and I was so excited to get it through NetGalley because I really liked her book Confessions on the 7, it's either Confessions on the 745 or the 747. I always mess that up in my head, but I really enjoyed that book. I actually read that earlier this year, and I believe I gave it 5 stars. Yeah, I did. I gave it 5 stars. So it was a really, really, really good book. This book was good. It was not the best book that I've read this year. It wasn't the best book I've read by her, but it was actually very, very good, and I really enjoyed it. It had a premise that I haven't seen done before in a book, and I thought it was really interesting. The plot was really interesting and great. I liked the characters, and I really disliked some characters, which I know I was supposed to. This book also has moments where it's told in the past from different perspectives and different characters, so that was interesting to see some background on certain people and to see how they would all connect and come together for the major story, because there's more or less two stories happening in this book. There's the main characters and their story and what's happening at this cabin, and there's a story about a young boy named Henry all the way back in the early 2000s until he is a grown man in present time, and you're kind of wondering and trying to figure out how does he connect to these people, because obviously they're connected somehow, and you're kind of trying to figure out the how. The how is interesting, the why is good. I thought the plot was really interesting, but let's get into that. Okay, Secluded Cabin Sleep 6 is about the main character Hannah and her brother Mako. I think it's Mako because it's supposed to be like the shark. His real name is Michael, but he goes by Mako because he's a shark in business, and that's what he does. When he reinvented himself after high school, he's a big tech guy. He does video games. He's worth lots and lots of money. Back in the day, Hannah, his only sister, his younger sister, used to work for him, and that's how she actually met her husband, Bruce. He did stuff for the company, her brother's company, like programming and coding and making sure things were going to be working the way they were supposed to work. Hannah is the good girl. She was always the good girl. Her brother was the troublemaker. He was the really popular one. He was the extremely smart one. And she was the one that cleaned up all the messes, more or less. And now she's in her 30s. She's married. She has a very small child at home. And, she's getting into domestic life in some ways. She doesn't work anymore because she wants to be a stay-at-home mom. I understand that. I'm a stay-at-home mother, so I understand that pull that they get you right here, and you don't ever want to leave them. And she doesn't want to leave her daughter, so her husband's working for her brother's company. And one day Mako calls and is basically like, hey, I think that we should take this vacation. Hannah, you deserve it. You need it. God knows, let's all go away. I found this cabin. I'm dying to go. I think it's going to be so much fun. It'll be me, you, Hannah, Bruce, her husband, and Hannah's best friend, Cricket. I know, what a name, right? Her best friend, Cricket. Mako also dated her years ago, and they are all friends. They've been friends for over like 20 years, since they were like kids in high school, freshmen in high school, I believe it was. So maybe 15 years, not 20, 15 years. And whoever Cricket's boyfriend of the month is, because she's a beautiful bombshell kind of girl who just is always dating somebody new. So they decide to go there, but what they don't know is somebody is watching, and somebody is waiting, and somebody has been waiting a long time to set a score. And you're kind of trying to figure out who it is, and then once you figure out who it is, you're trying to figure out the why. Also, at the very, very beginning of this book, they talk about DNA testing, and it takes place in 2017 for Christmas, and they get these kits in the mail, and somebody gifted them, and they don't know who, they don't know why, but Hannah is a little like taken off guard by that. Like, why are we doing DNA ancestry? Who would do this? You know, who would give this to us? I'm never going to do this right. He swears, the brother, that he didn't do it. Their father didn't do it. Their mother didn't do it. So you don't know where this test came from. Now, DNA has a big thing to do with this book. I don't think that's giving anything really away, because a lot of it is like very early on. It has DNA situations. And then we also are reading from the perspective of Henry, who, when we are introduced to him in the early 2000s, he is a young boy who has a very turbulent childhood, and is him and his mother are moving constantly. They're never settling down. Then something traumatic happens, and he is actually placed in a home. All he knows is he knows who his mother was, obviously, but he was told that his father was a sperm donor. Now he didn't know if that was true, if it wasn't, but now in the age of technology and how things have advanced, he and lots of other people end up finding that they have the same father, the same sperm donor father, and it's kind of that connection of that story plot of like what's going on with that, and then also what's happening with these people and how is everything connected together. And I will say, when it all connects together, it's like a powerhouse of a boom. It's really good. It's really interesting. It was actually really cool too to see a book deal with like DNA and like Ancestry.com kind of things, 23andMe, and kind of figuring out all of that, and like how DNA is, and how much we're all actually very much alike, and it only takes like 1% of what makes us all different in our DNA. It was very interesting, I gotta say. I'm not a science person, my husband is, but I'm sure he would have been fascinated by that book. The mystery was really good. The thriller was okay. I wasn't that thrilled, and I was waiting for like this, when the climax happened, I was like, oh, it's gonna be good. Oh, it's over. It was a good read. It was not a great read. I read it over a couple of days very leisurely. I wasn't attempting to read faster. I was actually on vacation, and I was like, I'll just read a little bit here, read a bit there. But it was a good read. It did keep me entertained. I did like the characters. I liked Hannah a lot. I liked her as a main character. I liked her no nonsense. I liked how she took charge of situations. I liked Cricket, even though she was a little bit of a bitch, but I like me a bitch, so I enjoyed her as a character. I liked Mako a little bit. I liked how much I didn't like him, you know, if that makes sense. Like, he was a character that you just knew was a dick, and you knew it from the jump, but at least you knew he was an ass. Like, it was like, you could appreciate that. Let that wash over you, the fact that he was an absolute tool. I liked his wife, Liz. I liked Bruce a little. Bruce, I felt, was not a character that was fully examined. There was a lot of, sometimes I forgot he was there. I was reading and I'm like, oh yeah, Bruce, where the frig is he today? And I didn't care. I just didn't care. The owner of these cabins was really creepy. I liked him. I liked his backstory a little, but I wished we had flushed that out more towards the end. I feel like that was just kind of open-ended and done. Didn't really love that. But I did like the book. I like the idea that these couples going away for a long weekend, that there are secrets all between them, that they're family, more or less, too. So that adds another layer of, hey, we're not just friends, we're family members, except for Cricket. Hannah and Mako are brothers. Liz is Hannah's sister-in-law, and Bruce is Mako's brother-in-law. So they're all family for the most part. And, you know, you can't avoid your family. You can try, God knows, but you can't always do it. Can you? No. But I thought it was good. I thought it was a good book, not a great book. I like Lisa Unger, and I did enjoy this book, and I would recommend this book to somebody else. Secluded Cabin Sleep 6 is not out as of yet. It's out in the middle of November. So obviously be on the lookout for that. I know you can pre-order it, and I don't think it's still available on NetGalley, but it might be. So if you would, if you would like to read it, hit the little button for request, and hopefully you'll get one. It took me a long time to get this book. I requested it like 3 months ago, and got it like the other day. And was like, oh, now we're changing this TBR just a tad. But I thought it was good. I did enjoy it. It was a mystery. It was a thriller, but it wasn't. The plot was something I've never seen before, but how they handled the plot was something I've seen too much. A lot of regurgitation of the same ideas in some of those ways, and I wasn't such a fan of that. They do deal in this book with things in the R family. So that's a big trigger warning for many, many people. So I'm just letting you know that is discussed in detail. Not like gruesome or grotesque detail, but it is talked about on more than one occasion. I would say 4 separate occasions in the novel. And it happens with a teenage girl. So trigger warning for that if that bothers you, which I think it bothers everybody. It's to some extent, because it's fucking disgusting. But they do deal with that. I'm trying to think if there's any other trigger warnings. Not that I could think, but like I said, I took such a long time reading this book really leisurely that I wasn't like obsessed with the notes. So, but I highly doubt there's anything else. I think it was just the things in the R family to look out for, obviously. I mean, murder, mystery, thriller, it was pretty generic, actually, as far as things go. The plot, the twist was done very interestingly, and as I said, I've never seen that done in a book before, so I thought that was fun. But it was a good book. It was an average book, and I would definitely recommend it to other people. So, Secluded Cabin, Sleep 6 in mid-November by Lisa Unger. Check it out. It was a good book. Not her best work in my personal opinion, but it was really good. It was good. And we're done with this part. My first book in November. I am going to see you guys again in the next clip with a new book, and I actually know what I'm reading. Sometimes it happens, sometimes it doesn't. Most of the time it doesn't. I am actually reading, I'm looking at it right now, Sarah Addison Allen's Other Birds. Yes, a bird. I was double checking that there was an S at the end of that. There is. I'm actually really excited to read that. I actually have the physical copy of that book. So I am actually dying to read that next. I actually know I'm reading that book, and I know a book I'm reading after that. It is shocking what's happening to me in November. I'm like coming together here. But like I said, and I'll say it again, Secluded Cabin, Sleep 6 was a good book, not a great book, but I would definitely check it out. It's definitely worth the check out, and the premise is something different. And in the mystery and thriller genre, we need different every so often. If it's executed perfectly or not, different is still fun. It's still something that we haven't read before, seen before, and for that reason alone, let alone that the author is a really great writer. Like, I was entranced into the book. It was a fun time. And I will see you guys in the next clip. Bye. Hello, everybody. It's Megan Reads, and I'm back to, yes, you guessed, to talk all about books. Now, you might notice in this clip immediately that we are in a different location than we normally are for my videos. As you can tell by the robe, we are in my bathroom. And that is because my son had a not so great day today. He is teething. His molars are coming in. And any of you that are parents know that sucks so bad when they're not feeling well. So I finished this book way earlier today, but he really wanted mommy and he really wanted daddy today. And now my son is asleep in the next room, and I have to be quiet. So the bathroom was my only option because the living room is taken right now by my husband and the dog running around like crazy. So I wanted to get this done because I really loved this book. I thought this book was so amazing. I enjoyed it so much, and I'm dying to talk about it. So without further ado, let's get into the book itself, which is Other Birds by Sarah Addison Allen. I'm looking at it, and obviously it's backwards on the monitor, so I'm like, what is it called? Other Birds by Sarah Addison Allen. And it's a physical book. I actually had this one, so, and it wasn't on Kindle and it wasn't on audio, so I was super excited to actually be able to pick up a copy of this book in Barnes & Nobles. So fantastic, this book. Oh my God, I could not put it down. I finished this book in 2 days, and the only reason it was 2 days is I made myself stop reading so I would have more time to read the next day while my son was napping, and I would be able to finish this book, because if it was up to me, I would have kept powering through and finished this book in 1 day, because it's that good. It was so amazing, and it wasn't long either. It was 287 pages. And I got through it really fast. It's a really fast read. I feel like if you really sat down and you read this book, you could probably do it within like 4 hours, because it's also so captivating. The characters are absolutely amazing. But before we get into the characters and what I think about everything, which is a lot, let me tell you. Let's first start with what this book is about. This book, Other Birds, is about Zoe Hennessy, and she comes from Tulsa, Oklahoma. She is now 19 years old, and she is going to the Dela Whip Della Swip. I'm going to try to say this correctly because the name. Hold on. Book. What is it called? Della Wisp. There we go. Because I keep wanting to say whip. I have a little bit of a lisp issue in my life, so it's hard to say that word. But she's going to the Della Wisp, which is an apartment complex, and there's a condo there that was actually left for her by her late mother. Her mother passed away when she was 7 years old, and the condo, along with some money for college, went into a trust fund that now she is using. She's going to be going to college nearby, and she wants to live in this condo and learn more about her mother, who she doesn't know too much about because she passed away really young, when she was young and when her mother was young. Her mother died in a car accident unexpectedly, so she doesn't know too much about her. She goes to this place and she's expecting to find like mementos of her mom's furniture, her mom's belongings, and there's really nothing there, and she's kind of disappointed because this is what she's been looking forward to finding answers, and she thinks that if she finds more answers about her mother, she'll understand who she is and why she is the way she is and why she thinks the way she thinks, and it's like a missing piece of herself. She doesn't find a lot of stuff about her mother, but what she does find is some very, very interesting characters that live there as well. There's Lizbeth, who is a woman in her 40s, who is a hoarder and is a little dysfunctional and doesn't like people very much. There is Lucy, who is Lisbeth's older sister. They absolutely hate each other and do not talk to each other and haven't spoken to each other in years. Lucy is someone that just stays in her house. She doesn't go out. She even gets her groceries and prescriptions delivered, so nobody has actually physically seen Lucy in years and years. There's Mac, who is a chef. He makes comfort food, and his food does anything but comfort him. He has a lot of issues dealing with that. There's Charlotte, who is a young artist. She's 27. I want to say she's 27 years old, and she's a young henna artist, and she's got a troubled past that she's more or less been running from for years. And then there is, I don't know why I want to say it wrong, and then there's Fraser, who is the manager of the Della Wisp Hotel himself, and he is a very interesting character. They all are, and these are the people that she falls in love with while she's there. She starts out being just a neighbor, and they slowly become more than that to her. They become her own version of a family, the family she chooses. And I almost forgot another character. And there's Oliver, Lisbeth's son, who you don't see till later on in the book, probably about the halfway point. Then you see Oliver as well. But these people end up becoming more than just her friends or the family that she chooses. And you also learn from multiple point of views how their life is and what brought them here and their struggles and their issues and how they don't exactly fit into society 100% themselves, much like Zoe doesn't fit in either. And it's a beautiful book. It's a beautiful book about family and about loss and how we grieve, and how sometimes we don't know how to let go of things, either because we're afraid to let go, because we're afraid that means by letting go we don't care anymore, when in reality that's not what it means. It just means we're moving past this point in our life, but it doesn't mean that we don't care anymore. It deals with ghosts, physical, and our own emotional baggage and our own emotional ghosts that we have from the past, and how we have to come to terms with them. And how eventually we have to let the bad that's happened to us go to become the people that we're destined to be, and to find the families we're destined to create ourselves. We're born into families, everybody is, but that doesn't exactly mean that's the family that you have to stay in. You can choose your own family. You can choose the people that you belong with, which is actually a reference to the title Other Birds. At one point, Fraser is talking to Zoe and more or less says, like, I'd rather be like the other birds, because there are these special Della Wisp birds that are actually there, which is the cover of these special birds that actually live at the apartment complex and have since the building was actually first done as an apartment. And he basically tells Zoe, I'd rather be like the other birds, the birds that aren't like everybody else. They're more beautiful. They're special. And who wants to be like everybody else when you can be yourself? You can be exactly who you've always supposed to be. And this book was so beautiful and so moving, and I enjoyed it so much. I thought dealing with loss there was moments I actually teared up in this book because there are people in my life that I have actually lost that were very close family members, and reading how they dealt with the loss and how it's hard to let go really triggered like a response in me as well. So I 100% understood, and I related to Zoe. Zoe's story made me angry at parts because her father doesn't care. She's very much at 19 100% alone in the world and on her own, and that happens to many people. Many people are alone. Many people don't have the support system. But seeing that from somebody who's such a wholesome, good person, it makes me angry. But then it makes me happy because along the way she found these amazing people who are all in many ways damaged themselves and have gone through so many struggles. I loved this book, and you probably just saw my nose again. I'm so sorry. But I absolutely loved this book. I loved every single character in this book. Who was my favorite characters? I got my notebook here. I loved Zoe. I loved Charlotte. I loved Mac. I didn't really like Lisbeth that much, but I actually kind of loved how much I didn't like her because she's such an unlikable character on purpose. She's someone that is very selfish. She's someone that's very much like, feel sorry for me. Everything's about me, and I know people like that. We all do. Some of us even have family members like that or friends like that, and she can't see, what is that expression? She can't see in front of her own face. Like everything is right here. You know, it's all about her, her, her. She can't see outward and understand why people are the way they are. She wants love so bad and doesn't realize to get love, you have to give love. And that's something that she doesn't understand. And her hatred towards her sister is really explored, and some of it is warranted and a lot of it's not. And it's very interesting to read that and her perspective and her anger. There are also ghosts in this place, which is amazing too. So you're actually getting 3 ghosts talking. You don't know who they all are till the end. Some you know before, some you don't. But one of them is Camille. I love Camille. She is one of the best characters. She was a woman that helped take care of Mac growing up. Not his mom, not anything like that, but a woman that in many ways was his mother. And she's gone, and him learning to let her go, and how there's a struggle for him, and how she isn't gone because she's waiting for him to be ready to let her go. And I thought that was really beautiful, and how they explored that relationship was great, and I loved her. I got a sense of this strong woman who took guff from nobody but loved this little kid, and just it made me cry. There were moments where I got really, really, really emotional with the stuff with Camille and Mac. Charlotte was a wonderful character that had such an interesting backstory, and I found myself wanting to get more chapters of her and what happened to her growing up and how she became the woman she became. There's a couple little twists and turns in this book that I really enjoyed, and I didn't actually see coming, because I didn't look at this book as, you know, a thriller where obviously you're expecting twists and turns. This is a contemporary novel, which is what I just assumed it would be straight arrow, and it was anything but that, and I love that, and I really appreciated it. I thought everything about this book was perfect. It was the perfect book. This book made me feel things. It made me feel so many emotions. It made me feel sad. It made me feel happy. It made me feel hopeful. It made me feel warm and fuzzy inside. And it made me look at the world and, you know, see, you know, sometimes it's really hard to look at the world and not see all the bad that's around us all the time. Let's be honest, we all see it, and sometimes we all get a little discouraged from it. And it was nice to see these characters who have gone through some serious shit and come out the other side and still see the beauty in the world where right in front of you. And that gave me some hope and made me want to look at the world a little bit differently, and also be a little kinder to myself. By reading these characters, a lot of how they felt or looked at themselves was something I could personally understand with being young, when I was younger, because everybody in this book is younger than me. I think the oldest character is actually Mac, and he's 30, and I am going to be 33 in August. God, I'm getting old, ain't I? But I absolutely, absolutely love this book. Normally, I really wish I could do like a longer video right now, but I'll be honest with you. I'm sitting in a bathroom. I'm on the floor and I'm losing the feeling in my left foot. So I'm actually going to end this review here, but it was absolutely an amazing book. Highly, highly, highly recommend. Check this out. It will not disappoint. And I will see you guys next time in the next clip. I actually know what I'm going to be reading. I'm going to be reading The Last Housewife by Ashley Winstead. I am super, super excited to read that. It's been a book that I've had for a long time. I didn't really like her previous novel, so I'm hoping that I really enjoy this. I know it's a lot of dark themes, so I'm also excited and also nervous to read it, but it'll be a change of pace from this, because this totally different world than what I'm about to read. But I will see you guys next time in the next clip, and hopefully I won't be in the bathroom with a foot that is falling asleep. Goodbye, guys. See you in the next clip. Hi, guys. I'm back to talk about the next book that I read. It was a really, really good book. The last book that I read is right over here, but before we introduce it, I just realized something right now as I'm in this camera. I was editing not too long before this clip. There are fucking people outside honking horns because it's 5 something, and that's just what you do in New York City. Beyond annoying when you're trying to film or just live, but can't really do anything about that noise. But I was editing, as I was saying, and one thing that I did notice in all my editing was, number one, I look tired, which a little bit this week, and number two, in every clip I'm wearing a blue shirt. I change my clothes, I promise. This is a totally different shirt, and so was the one before that. I just love blue, and I own a lot of blue, and that explains that, because I was looking at it before and I was like, I wonder if someone's gonna think I filmed this all on the same day. No, I filmed them literally the same day that I finished reading. Sometimes it's like right after, and sometimes it's hours after. Like this is hours after. I finished reading this book at about 11 o'clock this morning when my son was taking a nap. Then he woke up, the day went to crazy, and now it is after 5 o'clock and he is actually getting he is getting fed dinner by my husband. I also noticed another thing. I have my hair up in a bun today, which I actually usually do this running around as a mom like a crazy person. So it's really interesting that this is the first time, I think, in the video setting that you actually see me with my bun up. So here's my mom bun. Introduce it as a part of a, the club. But let's talk about the last book that I read. It is something to unpack, okay? And I have it in physical format. I'm also going to put up a picture of it because that's just what I do. I've done it so often now that it's just second nature. So I'm not going to hold this book the whole freaking time I talk. But what did we read? But The Last Housewife by Ashley Winstead. Okay, let's talk about this bitch. This big. It looks bigger than it actually is. It's like 300 and we're going to say how much? 300 and okay, not that bad. 364 pages. I actually got through this in 2 days. It was really good. I was really intrigued with it, which I'm happy to say I was, because I actually did read Ashley Winstead's In My Dreams I Hold a Knife. I know everybody raved about it. Everybody said it was so good. I didn't like it at all. So I was kind of a little nervous about this book. I've heard really good things about it. But I was nervous. I was like, am I going to like it? Am I going to enjoy it? Maybe I'm not into Ashley Winstead, which is fine. There's many authors that are extremely popular that just don't do it for me personally. This did it for me. I'm just going to give you a little spoiler on something. This is not a 5, but it's up there. It's good. This was a good book. This was really interesting. It had some extremely disturbing themes in it. Which I'm actually going to talk about a little bit. At the beginning of this book, actually, hold on, I'm flipping the pages. Let me see. It says it right at the start of this book. Right at the start. It says content warning for suicide, rape, physical violence, sexual violence, trauma, self-harm, misogyny, gender, I can't say this word right now. Essentialism. Oh, person's far smarter than I. and drug use. So it does warn you at the very beginning more or less what you're going to be in for. And I will say, as somebody who's now read the entire book, you're in for it. There's no way around this. This is not a pretty book. This is not a book that shies away from trauma. This is not a book that closes its eyes to how the world can be at times for some people. I thought it was very well written and it was interesting. But you know what? Before we get into that whole thing, right? What I think, my opinions, if you even care, let's get into what the book, excuse me for the itch of the nose, let's get into what the book is actually about. Okay, this book is about a young woman who's 30 years old named Shay Evans. She lives in a Texas suburb. She's a housewife right now. She doesn't want to be, but she is one. She married a really rich man named Cal. She was a writer for online, I believe it was online, an online magazine. She stopped working from them 6 months ago because she wanted to write a book that she's been thinking about doing for years and years. Now she has the time, she has the chance, and she has the financial stability to be able to not work and focus on it. Now, anyone that writes will know when you have all the time in the world, all of a sudden you can't think. Relatable for me and anyone else, I'm sure, that has written a book or written anything of any kind. So she has severe writer's block, and she's just thinking about her past, thinking about her life as it is now, thinking about her looks. She's a very, very beautiful woman. She's been told she's been beautiful her whole life. She was in beauty pageants. She was in beauty pageants actually to get a scholarship to go to college. So she's brains and beauty. But she was taught very young that her looks were what were going to get her out of places and make a better life for herself. So she used her looks to her advantage, which, go for you, baby. You got to do what you got to do. We all do. Everybody's got to survive and eat. And she's home one day and she's listening to a podcast. It's actually, the podcast is her very best friend. She hasn't seen him in years and years, and he's a successful true crime podcaster. She's listening and she misses him. She'll always miss him, but she's not going to reach out. She's not going to talk to him again. It's been way too many years, and the last time they saw each other, it was not a good experience. Let's just put it at that. And as she's listening and doing chores and things around the house, she hears the name Laurel, and she stops dead. And her friend Jamie more or less says that Laurel is a woman that he met through her, Shay, in college, and she actually recently died. They actually found her body at the Whitney campus in New York City, the college that they both had attended, and she very triggery. She was hanging from a tree. And the cops are wondering, is it suicide? Is it not? Now, Jamie does not think it is. He thinks it's suspicious. He's gotten reports, police reports, and he's basically saying on his true crime that is hard to say. True crime podcast. There we go. That, if you're listening, please come forward and help me. I want to understand, you knew her better than anybody else. Do you know what this is? And 8 years prior to this, they had another friend named Clementine who killed herself as well on the same campus. So he's thinking that maybe she has a link to understanding what this is all about. And the crazy part is she does. So she ends up reaching out. She ends up going to New York and wanting to investigate Laurel's death herself because she feels responsible that she didn't save her, that her life turned out the way that it did, and hers turned out so much better than was expected of her. And even better than she more or less thought would happen. And when she's in New York, she starts investigating. And by investigating what happened to Laurel, she's also meeting up with Jamie, who's a podcaster, like I said. And she basically tells him, I want you to interview me, to understand Laurel, to understand what happened to our friend 8 years ago, to understand how I know for a fact this is not a suicide. You need to know the story. And the story isn't just Laurel's story. It's Laurel's, it's mine, it's Clementine, who had passed away. It's all of our stories, and it's a story that needs to be told and needs to be out there. And she tells her story, and it's actually in little transcripts in the book, which is really interesting. The whole book is like that. It's told from Shay's perspective, and then these transcripts of her talking about all different parts of her life and why she is the way she is, how she got exactly here. It's really interesting. They're not really long chapters, but they're really in-depth chapters, and I really enjoy that, actually. I did not listen to this in audiobook, but I'm sure that would be really cool in an audiobook to listen to that way. But reading it was amazingly fun. I had a really good time. I thought the writing of this book was so smart and so good. It was really, really interesting. And it was heavy. It was very heavy. This is not giving any spoiler. It's actually in the synopsis. One of the things that is talked about is how Shay, Laurel, and Clementine met a man when they were in college and more or less fell under his thumb, and that this man was a very powerful person, and some very bad things happened, things that they allowed to happen consensually, and lots that they did not. And it's talking about that, their life, and what made them want to stay with somebody like that, and when they had the strength to leave, if any of them regretted it, how they've dealt with the past trauma of that, how they dealt with losing their one friend. It's a very moving book, but it's a heavy book. It's really heavy. It deals with a lot of adult themes. The R word is mentioned multiple times to multiple characters throughout this book. This book made me sad. This book made me so angry at how some of these male characters, no, not some, like 99% of them, how 99% of the male characters acted towards the women. I understand why they were written that way. It makes sense for the book, but it infuriated me. There is a character that does not believe a woman got assaulted because she was dressed sexually, maybe a little. She had a skirt. It made me want to throw the book, but at the same time, unfortunately, there are fucked up people that think that. And if you're going to write a book, you have to be honest, and you have to be realistic in what the world is, and how some people view things, and some people look at things through a very narrow-minded lens. And that's exactly what this book does. It's heavy. It's heavy to look at, the way that they talk about women. Also, there's one part in this book particularly that I actually made a note to talk about it because it really hit me, and I actually talked to my husband about it. Shay talks about growing up and obviously being a very attractive woman, little girl even, and how Jamie and her, even though they came from the same place, he's a guy, she's a girl, they grew up very differently. And yes, Jamie had more money, things like that, but more just like societally, how they grew up was very differently. And he didn't understand what she was talking about, and she basically explained, like, I've been getting hit on since I was 12 years old by grown men in cars, hooting and hollering, while my mother was next to me. I was taught as a young girl, like, if a guy is smiling at you, look at the floor, don't give any attention, because any attention means that in their mind you might want it, or you might want them to do something to you. When you walk home at night, make sure you have multiple people with you. These are things that men, unless they have siblings that are females, don't always understand, and they don't always look at the world in such a lens. They're not taught to. They're not taught to be afraid the way that women are, and as cautious as women are more or less taught. And reading that triggered me, and I know it triggered many girls, many girls girls and women who read this book, because a lot of us, I'm in my 30s, this character is 30, so in a lot of ways I was raised the same exact way of look down, don't draw attention to yourself as much as you can, especially if you are a pretty girl, especially, unfortunately, if you are a well-endowed girl at a young age. Unfortunately, you get lots of attention that you don't want, which shaded me as well, most of my friends. So it's just made me angry to see that, but at the same time I appreciated that conversation in the book, because that's a really honest conversation, and unfortunately that happens. Dealing with the R word in this book, it was done as nicely as it could have been done. It's not a happy situation. They're never going to handle it in a way that isn't traumatic to talk about or isn't hard to look at and see. This book goes to dark places. It goes to dark places sexually. It goes to dark places in wants and needs and desires, which is fine. Everybody has wants and needs and desires, and as long as no one's getting hurt and it's consensual, have all the fun you want. But There was just a lot in this book, and Shay is trying to find out what happened to her friend, and down this path of learning what happened to her friend, she gets sucked back into this world that she thought she escaped in her 20s when she left for college. This world of darkness, pain. There is BDSM mentions, but it's more than that. And I also don't want this book for somebody to look at this when it talks about BDSM and think like, oh, that's a bad thing, quote unquote. As long as everybody's consensual and healthy and happy, like that doesn't fucking matter, and that shouldn't be used as like a negative, quote unquote, narrative. In my personal opinion, you're consenting, you're having a good old time, do your thing. But this goes far more than that. It goes past consent, which makes this a really hard read. Well written. I appreciated the narrative. I liked Shay as a character. I liked how much I liked how flawed she was. I love that she wasn't perfect. I love that she admitted she was fucked. I like that she went back into her own memories and she didn't play the victim. Like, I did nothing wrong. She was like, I did lots wrong. I made lots of wrong choices. That was an interesting conversation that they actually had too, about choices, and her saying, I made these choices and this is what happened. But as I was reading it, I was wondering how many of these choices did she actually consensually make, and how much was put upon her at a young age, and those choices were stolen from her. And that's talked about by her friend Jamie in this book. Consent is talked about in this book. What we want versus what we need is talked about in this book. Letting go, trauma, dealing with our trauma, not pushing it away and pretending it doesn't exist, is talked about in this book. Family's talked about in this book. I liked the story at its core. I do believe it got a little confusing in the middle, and I found myself going back and forth trying to connect little parts. And the way that the women were talked about in this, understandable for what the plot was, but it made me angry, and lots of times it made me a little nauseous to hear these men speak so brutally of women, and the women characters having to just sit there and listen to it and not have any reaction made me want to be like, somebody grab a glass and just throw it in their face. It just to the men. So this is a hard book to read, but it was a good book. I did enjoy it. I will actually pick up Ashley Winstead's next book, because I wouldn't say I didn't like it. In My Dreams I Hold a Knife, I gave 3 stars, which is still good. I would highly recommend something with 3. I would recommend something with 3 stars. Wouldn't highly do nothing with 3 stars. This, I'm just going to give a little spoiler, I guess. I'll do it in my wrap up or whatever at the end of the month, but this is a 4. For me, this is a 4. It was good, wasn't great. It's a book that I will remember and it will stay with me. And in some ways, that's what made it a 4 even more. But there were some moments that mine were a little lacking in sense. So for that reason, it went from a 5 to a 4. But I did enjoy it. I enjoyed this crazy friggin' ride that this book was, because it was a ride. I'm not even gonna lie to you. It was an absolute friggin' ride. I'm trying to think. Do I have anything else to say? I liked Shay. I was gonna say I liked what I knew of the character Laurel, but I don't know if that's actually true. She was very damaged and it was sad. I like Jamie. I like Jamie a lot. The true crime podcaster. I thought he was a friggin' really cool character. I enjoyed him. I enjoyed any time he was around. That was the one time I could truly say I had fun, because he was a guy that was a good guy. He was like the only good guy in the entire fucking book. So whenever he was on, I felt like I could breathe. Like, oh, there'll be no abuse right now. Okay. Like, no verbal attacks for 5 fucking minutes. But it was a good book. I did enjoy it, and I would recommend it, but it does say at the very beginning, trigger warnings, and I'm telling you, they're real, okay? If you do not want to read something that has the trauma in it, the R word in it, abuse, heavy abuse, and heavy toxic masculinity, and disgusting talk, and unfortunately self-harm, I wouldn't read that if those are triggers for you, because they're mentioned quite a bit. It's not like you could avoid it or just, skip past 1 or 2 pages. It's in so much of the book that if you skipped every time it was mentioned, at the end you'd be like, what was the story? You'd be kind of confused because you need those elements for it to make sense. So if those trigger you, which they trigger me, I just know how to kind of I can push past it. Some people can't, and some people shouldn't. It's that stuff is, if I was watching a movie, I couldn't watch something that dealt with this as much. I could read something like this, but I could never watch it. There's so many movies that I'd love to watch but have so much violence, like gratuitous violence against women in it, that I cannot watch it. So if this is not for you, I get it. It's not for everybody. I can tell you that right now. The ending was good. It was a good book. It was interesting. It kept me wanting to know more and wanting to know how it was going to end, because there was many moments I was like, where is this going to go? Is this just going to go straight out super violence against women for the entire book? Because if that's the case, I think I'm going to lose it. But it didn't. There is some moments of vindication that after reading all that is needed. So that's good. But it was a good book. I enjoyed it. Now, I don't know if this is going to be the end for this week or if I'm going to read another book. I think I'm going to read another book. I'm pretty sure. Well, what day are we on? I'm thinking. Yeah, no, I'll be able. I'll probably read one more book. If not, and it ends here, then hi guys, and I can't wait to see you next week, but we'll see. I'm pretty sure I'm going to be able to read one more book. I'm going to push and try. We will see how it goes. But the next book, I do know what the next book I read is, and I'm actually doing a buddy read on that. So I'm actually starting reading that tomorrow. So I should be able to do it. If not, and this is the end, I'll come back and be like, oh, sorry, couldn't do it, and say goodbye. But if you don't see me again, then I will see you in the next clip. Bye, guys. Hi guys, it's Megan Reads, and I am actually editing Megan from the future. Ooh, fun times. I'm actually editing right now, and I'm putting everything together, and I was talking about how, oh, you know what, if I can't fit another book, I'll just save it for a couple of days later and put it in like the second week's vlog. I'm gonna have to do that because I'm editing, and I'm like, oh, this is going so well. And then I looked at how long this one is already, and it's 47 minutes long, and I'm like, wow, this is really fucking long. Nobody's gonna want to stay tuned for another like 25 to 35 minutes to watch me talk about the next book that I'm gonna be reading. So what I'm gonna do is the next book that I'm actually going to be reading, I'll put that in week 2. Which is literally like days away anyway. So I'll give myself like a 2-day, 3-day break of reading, which would be nice because I'm actually planning to go away next week. So I can do a little bit of planning on that and getting things together and save that book for a couple of days from now and still do my my buddy read with my friends. So I'm super excited about that. But yeah, editing Megan coming in to say this is going to actually be it for this week 1 in November. I'm super excited, and I hope you guys like everything that I talked about. I really hope that you enjoyed it, and I cannot wait to hear your opinions on everything, and I can't wait to see you next time. Happy, healthy, and of course, reading. Bye guys.